So just to remind you, you're now in the Startup Nation, Startup People session. And my name is Murray Zucker, and I'll be just introducing and setting this up. A few things before we start, just to remind everybody the usual. Please turn off your phones. There'll be Q&A afterwards. And again, the rules of engagement are you have a question, keep it brief, and make sure it's a question out of respect to everybody. Also to remind you that after this is a plenary session, which will be very interesting and exciting, and after that a reception, and also there'll be songs from a group that you don't want to miss. So let's get on with the discussion. And the Startup Nation term, you've all read the book, Innovation Nation as well, and then the biblical invocation to be fruitful and innovate. You've all heard of that line as well. So Israel, obviously you all know, is become a world power in startup, in technology and innovation. And this is on a global level. So it involves the Far East and Near East and the U.S. and Europe and all over the world. Leadership in cyber and healthcare, fintech and agriculture, water and all. So how does this relate to the theme of the day, Israel, Zionism, the interaction of diaspora Jewry and diaspora, and what is our common destiny, and to what extent do we have our future destiny as a Jewish people in our own hands to starting from today perhaps, to really take the destiny in our own hands and how to shape it. So I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves to do them more justice than my one-liner. So we'll start over.
Thank you, Maurice. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming. This has been a wonderful day so far. And the objective of this session is basically to try to examine the Jewish American platform, its role, its advantages, disadvantages, how it's been evolved over the years, etc. I'll ask each of the panelists to present themselves and also to share something personal. If you can share with the audience, what is something that you're really passionate about? I'll start with you, Yasmin.
Sure, is this working? Yeah, hi. So my name is Yasmin Lukatz. I was born and raised in Israel. I moved here 15 years ago because I wanted to go to graduate school for Stanford. I'm very much involved in the Jewish community. I was on the OFJCC board, on the Hausner board. I'm now on Birthright board. Recently joined the San Francisco Council for the IAC, and I work as a Heritage Fellow, so pretty involved in a lot that's happening. But on my day-to-day job, I run a nonprofit that's called ICON, which is kind of the context for this conversation. ICON stands for Israel Collaboration Network. We are a community, a paid-forward community of people that are passionate about Israeli high-tech and innovation, and we try to use the strength of this community to help all community members. So Israeli, Jewish, non-Jewish, the common thread is the interest in high-tech and in business coming from Israel. And what was the second question about a passion?
Something you can share.
Sounds like you said what you're passionate about.
It's true. Recently, when I went back to a Stanford reunion, they try to bring a professor to speak. So if you kind of hear something interesting that's happening in research. And we had Professor Jennifer Acker speak. She's a marketing professor, and she's researching happiness. And one of the things she said is what happiness for you changes over time. When you're a baby, it's about food. And when you're in your 20s, it's about action and so on. And in your 40s, it's about impact and about community. And I pretty much I feel I hit 40, so.
I'm afraid to ask what is about you when you turn 50.
So it's interesting because when you're 60, it's about peace and quiet and balance.
Okay.
So
to look forward to.
So I'm in my 40s. I'm all about community and impact, and that's where my passion.
Excellent. Avner.
So, hi, my name is Avner Mendelson. I'm the CEO of Bank Leumi USA, which is a separate bank from Bank Leumi in Israel. Born and bred in the northern part of Israel, even though now that I'm actually on a flight over here today, I did the calculation that I've now lived more of my adulthood life outside of Israel than in Israel as an adult, which is, kind of a bit of a knife in the stomach a little bit. We'll touch on that later. Bank Leumi, the reason I guess we're here, besides the fact that we're involved with this conference, is that we're the bank of the startup nation. In Israel, we serve probably 2 out of 3 startups, and with offices here and in New York, we basically provide the same type of services to the Israeli related technology ecosystem. something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about Israel, and I'm passionate more and more about Judaism, which is something I've discovered when I moved to New York 6 years ago.
Very nice. Ethy.
Hi, so I'm Ethy. I grew up in France, made my Aliyah when I was 19, and joined the Israeli Ministry of Economy, served as a trade attaché or trade commissioner in 3 different communities, 3 different countries, in Hungary, in Thailand, and then recently in Australia. So I lived 5 years in Australia, in Sydney. I was very involved with the Jewish community there, mainly promoting Israeli technology, innovation, investment into Israeli startups. And a year ago, I moved back to Israel, left the government, and established my own company where I give strategic advisory on tech and innovation, working with government, with large corporates, and with startups. I also served as economic advisor to the President of Israel, where I pushed hard the topic of Jewish diaspora and creating a new dialogue with the Jewish diaspora, more based on kind of mutual relations and many of the topics that we're touching on at the conference today. And what I'm passionate about, I'm very lucky to be passionate about almost everything that I do. So raising my kids, playing basketball, but mostly passionate about technology and innovation and using those tools to make our world a better place and creating a positive impact on society and the environment.
Excellent. Eli.
And Ethy is very much to thank for the President's involvement in the Z3 conference and movement. So thank you, Ethy, for that. I'm Eli Novershtern. I'm a partner at a venture capital firm called Square Peg Capital, which operates in Australia, where Ethy served in the US and in Israel. I'm passionate about 2 broad themes, I would say, professionally about innovation and entrepreneurship as a force for good in the world, like many of you. And personally, also passionate about community and impact, which in my case is Jewish continuity and Jewish peoplehood, which is what I care about deeply. I serve on a couple of nonprofit boards, or more than a couple actually, among them the Re'ud Group, a partner in this conference, and also the World Jewish Congress Board, which is the political representative organization of Jewish communities worldwide. I care especially about the small communities of the Jewish world, which do not get enough attention from the large, well-funded, well-organized, well-represented Jewish world. My family comes from some of these smaller communities, and even though we're not large in numbers, I think we are important in the whole spectrum of Jewish continuity. This includes small communities in the US. Thankfully, the Bay Area is not a small community, but that's another area that I'm passionate about.
Very nice. And myself, my name is Amir. Faintuch. Again, thank you for coming to this session. I've been starting my life in a startup myself, and later on I was drawn into the corporate America. My current role, I'm a member of the Intel Executive Committee. I manage all the worldwide R&D for the company for 4 years, and now I'm having a little bit more fun playing with some startups and key strategic investments and M&A. I'm involved in the Jewish-Israeli community, first and foremost, join forces with Yasmin. We all work for Yasmin at the end of the day. I think that, and I say it with a lot of passion, the Israeli Collaboration Network is a great a platform that I hope we would be able to use that example as one of to amplify the topic of today. I'm also on the board of the Oshman Family JCC, and the partner, basically part of the Jewish, the J Angels Fund. Oded Chamoni is here. So this touch points between being an Israeli, Jewish, American, it's all of the above. I'll start by raising a question. When we think about this topic, we're trying to examine peoplehood, kind of the theme of Z3 this year. It's about the brotherhood, the peoplehood, through the Zionism aspects. But this session is all about the business lens. So if you think about the Jewish and the American and Israeli business platform, what is the role for that platform in your view? Ethy, you may want to start.
Sure. So I can share a bit from my experience in Australia and working with the Jewish community over there. I think that when I moved to Australia, it was 6.5 years ago, there wasn't too much investment from the Australian Jewish community. They did large investment in real estate and some other investment about 20 or 30 years before, or right after the establishment of the state. And some of them had, not so good experience, and they decided that, they want to keep Israel to have a special place in their heart and disconnect it from business and keep it as a philanthropic relation or more a bit different kind of relation. And for many years, they didn't look at Israel as a business opportunity or a place to do business with. And I think that when the younger generation came into the picture, and they were less connected to the philanthropic side with Israel, because Israel was not, just at the establishment of the state. The side of, looking at Israel as, the startup nation and wanting to be part of all this buzz around innovation brought them back into this space of doing business with Israel. And we saw that actually it brought a really great benefit to the Jewish community in Australia because it created a new level of connection with Israel. So I think there's lots of space for this connection between the Jewish communities and Israel in terms of connecting to the innovation and connecting the younger generation as well.
But is it any specific role that you guys think, just because we're being, coming from Israel and connecting to Jewish people, should we basically exploit it or take it? Is there an unfair advantage, right? So think about the following, in Israeli, or think about Bank Leumi. Just the fact that Leumi has the name, you look at that as an American boutique bank, right? What's your view on that, Avner?
Wow. So
is there any link?
So if I think about it just sort of from a business or a strategy, the connection is both an asset and a liability. And, like any good bank, you need to balance both sides of it. If you look a little bit into the origin, I think, of the bank in the U.S., which I think is sort of a little bit of a good metaphor for the topic and the discussion that we're trying to solve or start to solve here today, which is how do we bring together the diaspora Jewish community with Israel in a new era where it's not just about helping build a country and protect it from its enemy. Bank Leumi started in the U.S. in 1954 when the state was poor, coming to just starting its existence, reaching out to the guilt-driven rich uncles in the U.S. and basically saying, open a certificate of deposit account so we can have some foreign exchange to buy, airplanes and at that time maybe tanks to start a nation. And when you look at the role the bank played in that, was basically a guilt strategy, a little bit like the strategy of the state towards the Jewish diaspora. Fast forward, definitely for today, that's an irrelevant strategy and an irrelevant subject to connect the communities, both from a business perspective, absolutely, and when it comes to, I think, what we're trying to discuss here beyond the business, to make it relevant. What is the common denominator? Why should we, and when I say we, is both as Israelis and Jewish Americans, why should we care about each other? What is the common denominator? What brings us together? And I think that's where today the startup nation role makes Israel much more relevant to the Jewish community, not just the Jewish community, the whole American community and the business community worldwide. But I think that's one area where we can broaden the relevancy of Israel both to the Israelis when it comes to the Jewish community and definitely to the Jewish community in the U.S. And I see it time and time again. That sort of ignites a spark that I think has been missing for a long time now.
I want to go a little bit deeper.
I can give you a few examples that kind of is exactly to that point. Well, let me start by saying, you asked if, I think Israel is, in Israeli business is in a very unique position. It's not like Danish high tech, because everyone who's Israeli wants to support us, but everyone who's Jewish also wants to support us. And you asked if this is an unfair advantage. What's unfair about it? It's a business. It's not illegal. It's not immoral. You got to use your connections. Like, I'm going to ask people from my kids' soccer group, the parents, if I met them, is this unfair? So what we try to do at Icon is making Israeli an advantage. Now, we're lucky to have a great product to promote. Israeli high tech is, if you are in business, if you're in high tech, you have to know what's happening in the Israeli ecosystem to be relevant. And I feel like I have a great product to promote. What I think the role is let me give you an example. So we had our conference right here at the Oshman Family JCC, and we did like a little promotional video, and I tried to speak with the people that came to the conference. And I'm trying to interview like a woman. She's a very senior executive in a big firm, and she's Jewish. I didn't even know she's Jewish. Yeah. And I said, can I ask you a few questions for a video? And she's like, oh, my mom's going to be so excited about this because she wants me to go to shul. I don't go to shul. She wants me to do this. I don't do any of those things. But now I get to do something that I need to do for business, and I'm staying relevant. And and I'm doing something my mom's going to be happy about. So I think
there's always a Nidusha Mama at the end of the tunnel.
I think we did something that kind of, like you said, brought more people to the conversation. In her mind, she's doing something Jewish while doing something she has to do for her work. And even look at you, for example. You're now part of the board of the Oshman Family JCC. And if I recall correctly, you met the Oshman Family JCC because you became involved with Icon.
Absolutely.
So here we have a live example here on the panel.
The best recruit strategy.
Yes. So I think especially in times like this when there's a big divide between Israel, I wouldn't say divide. There is a divide. I don't want to say big because then it's like perpetuates it. There is a divide between Israel and the Jewish American community. If there's something that we agree about, which is like Israeli high tech is great, let's focus on what we can agree about and bring through that people to the conversation.
And Yasmin is very right, and I think this is my next topic to you guys, and I'll get back to you on the challenges in a second, Avner. But I wanted to say the following. When I came to the United States, I came as an Israeli. All right? I came as an Israeli. I was affiliated first with an Israeli. Icon for me was, obviously, it's like an obvious choice. It's an Israeli collaborative nation. That led to expand the perspective and later on to join to the JCC. When I came to the JCC, I didn't come because it was the JCC. It was the home for Icon. And so I wanted to ask you guys, what is your journey? What is your perspective as an Israeli, an American Jew, or an American Israeli? Did you feel any evolution through your journey? Eli, can you share some of your perspectives on that?
I'm first of all a Jew, and then a Zionist, a Z3 or 21st century Zionist, and then an Israeli. And I'm a very staunch Israeli and a very proud Israeli, but much more than that, I'm a Zionist. And much more than that, I'm first and foremost a Jew. And you spoke about the connection with Israel being both an asset and a liability. I think there are many controversial issues in this conference. There's one completely non-controversial issue, as Yasmin said, and this is not a liability at all. It's a net asset to Israel, having a community of Jews and Israelis who are more open to things. And I agree, it's not an unfair advantage. It's a fair advantage. And everything is fair in love and war, but this is not even love and war. This is business. This is definitely a fair advantage. Our good friend Oded Hermoni is here. He always says, Indians invest in Indians, Chinese invest in Chinese, Jews and Israelis invest in Israelis. I'm an investor.
Jews and Israelis invest everywhere.
Everywhere. Not just,
but in Israel.
But there's always a door to be opened and a warm heart and a Shabbat dinner invitation when you're in a faraway place doing business like I get when I go to Australia and I'm about as far as I can get. There's always a Shabbat dinner table for me, which to me as a Jew, I said I am first and foremost a Jew, is very moving, but also a great advantage. And I think it's also an advantage for those welcoming communities. Israel is controversial. Being Jewish can be done in many different ways, but high-tech innovation, entrepreneurialism, making the world a better place, what's an asset? What's a liability about that? It's a net asset.
Absolutely. I didn't share my passion. My passion is, people who know me, is to basically mentor and work with people. I get energy by giving energy. And so that's my passion. And going back and looking into that platform, like any other platform, basically a successful platform is been measured whether you are able to connect emotionally between people. And I think that we're taking this kind of the Jewish DNA inside of it. But it comes later in life where you really resonate with your Judaism. I was an Apocryphus when I was totally scholar when I was young. And here you learn and you express yourself through the Judaism which we are taking for granted in Israel. Avner, I want to go back to you. You mentioned a pure aspect from the commercial perspective. When Leumi started, the first affiliation was the Jewish element. Do you see yourself today when Leumi US is a multi-billion-dollar bank? It's basically have grown from a small startup to a medium-sized boutique bank. What are the liabilities that you see being Jewish, being an Israeli affiliated when you want to expand your network?
Well, I think our liability, which stems from the asset, is it's an Israeli bank. And we're not an Israeli bank. And the first question I ask people, why would someone come and bank with an Israeli bank? I never heard that someone come and say, well, why should someone bank with an American bank like America or other? You don't ask those questions. And we're not an Israeli bank. Again, it sounds sort of a bit of a sort of, we're not an Israeli bank. We're an American bank. You know, they happen to make a mistake and have an Israeli as the CEO of the bank, but most of our clients are not Israeli. Most of our employees are not Israeli. Frankly, most of our employees are not even Jewish. A lot of our clients are Jewish because, again, try to do real estate in New York with non-Jews. It's almost impossible. Try to serve the tech community in New York and Palo Alto. It's almost impossible. But the bank is not Jewish. And I think the association, the automation, oh, that's an ethnic bank serving the Israeli community, sometimes can be a liability when, you know, you're positioning yourself and sort of what you're trying to bring from a value proposition is, you know, is sort of something that ascends religion and anything else. It's about value proposition that I think comes from an origin of what we come. And we're very passionate about the heritage, the passion, the care, which are parts of the value. But this is where I see the challenge of sort of trying to leverage the heritage, but sort of make it sort of clear that, you know, this is not just the ethnic bank of the Israelis.
So you don't see yourself in a position when basically a Swiss bank doesn't have to explain the affiliation to Switzerland, and you have to explain yourself the affiliation to Israel.
I mean, we're leveraging the connection definitely to Startup Nation. That's a great connection to leverage. But I mean, there's a lot of things that you need to, you know, there's the Swiss is also brand stands for other things that, you know, Israel stands for that we're trying to not necessarily be associated with.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, when we...
I do want to say, I mean, just to Ellie's point on being a Jew first, and this is sort of much more interesting than banking and business in my mind. And look, I'm 44 now, and I've been Jew for 5 years. I've lived all over in Jewish communities.
Born again Jew.
I'm still in the cocoon, you know, like the metamorphosis. But I was an Israeli all my life, in Israel, everywhere. There was nothing else that defined me aside from being Israeli until I met the community or got to be part through my kids and community. So I think, you know, I'm Israeli, transitioning into a Jew, and you know, eventually probably American as well. But I mean, this is sort of how I would define myself.
I think the reason you're saying this because in Israel, and again, this is kind of a little off topic, so stop us if you don't want us to talk about it.
It's not off topic.
It feels that in Israel, grow up in Israel, I'm completely secular. There's no way to be, you're either secular or Orthodox. There's no really all the amazing shades of Judaism that you have here. And when you come here, so I would say I'm Jewish, but I'm a secular Jew, and I'm a cultural Jew. And all those things that you don't have, you know, my level of belief on religiousness, secularism did not change, but now I see here that there's an option to be considered a Jew or considered, you know, to be Jewish and be that, which we don't see in Israel. And I think this is like a lot of the causes for the divide.
In my view, this is the essence of the Z3 movement.
Exactly.
We need to learn from each other. Nobody has a monopoly on wisdom and on the right way of being Jewish. There is no right way, and we can come to the diaspora and learn. And that's, I think, that DNA of living in a small Jewish community where if you don't build a school, there is no school. If you don't contribute to a synagogue, there is no synagogue, is very different from an Israeli experience where the state does everything for you. And you're Jewish by default. Here you need to be Jewish by active choice. And I think this is something us Israelis need to learn. I think our brothers and sisters in the diaspora also have things to learn from us.
It's interesting when you look back, and when I started to deal with the U.S. in the middle of the 90s, and basically sometimes being an Israeli entrepreneur wasn't such a good thing. Okay, Israelis were viewed as a little bit rough on the edges, to say the least, and difficultly not listening, etc. And as you evolve 20 years later, I find that basically being an Israeli, it's becoming something to be proud of. Now, of course, you know, we will always be a little bit different. but I see the entrepreneurs of today, the business person of today, how many Israelis are holding key positions in the Silicon Valley. This is amazing. So this evolution is really exciting to me. And at the beginning, when basically Israelis coming to the US had to reach out to Jews because they needed that, today I see the dialogue between that as secondary. And I wanted to ask you, Yasmin, when you're looking into Icon as an example, as the platform, obviously we're connecting founders to corporates and VCs. How do you see the evolvement in the past 5 years when it was purely the Israeli connection and the correlation to the non-Jewish community? Can you share some of your learnings and perspectives?
Well, we've been active for the past 4 years, not 5 yet.
4.5, did I say?
4, you said, yeah, 4, it's okay.
It looks like a long time to me.
I think what happened before we founded Icon is that everybody knows that you want a warm intro. You want to work with people you know. It's high tech, but people do business with people. They want to get to know you. So a founder would come from Israel and they'll try to get introduced to wherever they can get introduced to. Might have zero relevance to what they're doing. But what do we try to do? And I'm going to say it here, but I know Americans don't like this image, but it's like organizing the mafia. Israelis have better appetite to this. But, in the side talk, I think I'm Israeli American. I think I have an American part of me, but I didn't understand any of David Brooks' jokes this morning. So I was like, wait, what's wrong with that? Why is that funny? Why is everyone
You're
laughing?
the only brave one to admit it.
No, but everyone was laughing. I was like, maybe I'm not.
He's also Israeli.
Maybe I'm not. Yeah, of course she's going to send this text message. What's wrong with that?
I think you need to be over 50 to understand the joke.
So I don't know if I'm Israeli or American or where do I stand on that. But back to the point, I think what we try to do is put some structure around this, get everyone to pour their contacts into the network, and then give this unfair or fair advantage to the Israeli founders or to everyone who wants to be part of the community. I have, the investors that they get something out of it. Everybody gets something out of it. So I think what since the introduction of Icon and similar organizations in the ecosystem, there's more order and better ways, and we facilitate those connections. So we are giving this advantage to the Israeli startups. Sometimes I'm being asked about BDS, and does that impact business? And I got to say, so when I was asked first about this, I didn't see any BDS with the startups I'm working with the startups that we meet, but it didn't make sense to me that it doesn't exist. So I called the economic attaché to the consulate here, and I was like, okay, I've been asked about BDS. I don't see any BDS. I know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Tell me about your experience, what you're hearing. And what I heard from him is that it's more prominent within the universities. So startups that have to work with a university or rely on a collaboration with a university are having harder times. But again, at the end of the day, people want to make money and they want to do business with people. So if something changed, I think there's more organization and there's more Jewish people and even non-Jewish people that want to be part of this community. I think we created a brand for a great product that already existed. So we were able to make this like a cool thing to be involved in Israeli high tech. That's what I see here.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, the Silicon Valley is very vibrant, etc. I want to go back to you, Ethy. You have had experience to be in far places that are probably less advanced from the technology per se in comparison to the Silicon Valley. So this kind of community, Jewish and Israeli, can you share some of the differences that you've seen over there, and what can we learn in the Silicon Valley when we're looking into far and remote places, leveraging this platform?
So first of all, Australia is a very advanced technological country. They are one of the first ones to adopt 5G, and they invented the Wi-Fi and so on. So misconception, but
we can argue about that.
they even invented. I don't know. We went to the session on innovation with Gidi. They spoke about the two-level flash. It's not an Israeli invention. It's an Australian. Anyway, it's a very advanced technological country, but still the connection with startup ecosystems outside of Australia is something that has been happening in the past 7 to 8 years. And definitely they need any kind of platform to connect them with ecosystem around the world. And business at the end of the day, it's all about networks. So the more infrastructure for those networks you have, the more possibilities and opportunities you have. And the Jewish community in Australia has been more and more connected to the Israeli ecosystem in the recent years. SquarePeg is one of the examples. It's the first Australian fund, VC fund, that opened a fund specifically for investment into Israeli startups. So we see a great flow of companies and investors coming and going from the two countries. And again, creating a network and opening the door is just the first step. At the end of the day, the decision will be made, based on the business opportunity and the technology. So I don't see any wrong with, platform of this kind. On the contrary, it's just creating an additional infrastructure for a network.
How's the dependency on the local Jewish community for success?
So SquarePeg was founded by a Jewish entrepreneur from Australia, and actually I interviewed him a few months before he established this fund, and it was a huge conference on. It was the first conference on investing in Israel. It was amazing attendance, and I asked him on the stage, "Did you decide to invest in Israel because of your Jewish background or because of the business opportunity?" And his answer was amazing. He's a very clever guy. He said that he decided to invest in Israel in order to become a better investor, because he wanted to learn from the experience of Israel.
If you succeed in Israel, you can succeed
investing.
everywhere.
Yeah, he wanted to learn, he wanted the know-how on how to invest in successful startups and how to build successful startups. And I think that
I have to give you a bit of an insider insight on that one. Although part of my partners are Jewish, another part are non-Jews, and it was actually as much as my Jewish partners love Israel and have been investing in Israel for generations, the reason that SquarePeg opened in Israel was the non-Jewish partner at the time who really pushed for it. He said it's a great role model for Australia to learn how to build an ecosystem.
Yeah. It's true. I can give another example. One of the leading philanthropic families in Australia, they don't do any business with Israel. They actually have an amazing company, but no connection to Israel besides philanthropy. And I tried with the chairman, I tried with the CEO, anyone from the family said, no, we're happy the way it is. And then I went to the head of innovation, very Australian, non-Jewish, no connection to Israel whatsoever. And I came to him with a list of 10 Israeli solutions that are perfect fit for his company. And he said, wow, I love it. Took a delegation of all the executives to Israel. Today they do lots of business with Israel. And
Were they?
the head of the family doesn't even know about it, but it doesn't matter. We get the business, so I'll tell you afterwards.
Oh, the low end.
But Ethy, you're raising a very interesting point, and I wanted to elaborate on that. If you think about the multinationals that are operating in Israel, I want to connect this Jewish-Israeli platform to that. Because if we think about it, right now, probably we have like 500 multinationals operating in Israel. And sometimes this Jewish-Israeli connection is becoming even more problematic. And I had the advantage to work in very large corporate America, such as Texas Instruments or Qualcomm and now Intel, and we are the largest private sector employer in Israel. We employ 14,000 people. I think our contribution to the GDP is probably 2.5 or 3%. Okay, 7% in terms of exports, so that's a big gorilla. What I've found, and I'm interested to hear your opinion, guys, what I've found being an Israeli in top positions actually makes it very challenging when you have to promote or to advocate decisions that are directly benefiting the other side of the equations. We talked a lot about the Silicon Valley, we talked a lot about Australia and others. I want to talk a little bit about the Israeli aspect and to go a little bit backwards. I found that basically when you're making a decision, people may view you favoring the Israeli arm. And that becomes very problematic. In my position, I had 20 operations in 20 countries. Israel is important, but I had huge teams in Oregon or in India and others. And I had to find out and basically make sure that I'm creating a platform. Now, here is the dilemma. On one hand, Eli, you define yourself as Zionist. And then you define yourself as Jewish, right?
No,
First Jew.
Jewish.
So for Jew, but and then Zionist, etc. And the business came probably third. Here I am looking into that is from a business perspective when I have to benefit being an executive to make sure that whatever I do, I benefit the corporate. And the corporate is not Jewish. Okay, it's a publicly traded corporate most of the times. So I find that the tension of basically being an Israeli in a senior position has its own challenges. And I wanted to open up to you guys to share what do you find when you're dealing with multinationals, where you're trying to benefit something that may relate to Israelis versus Americans or any other nation. Have you tackled that tension?
Look, I think any business-based decision at the end of the day needs to be based on its merits. And I realize that when an Israeli senior executive makes a decision that benefits Israel, the bar for that decision needs to be even higher.
Right.
And the onus is fully on us to create value. And for that value to be overwhelmingly clear to everyone. So when we said unfair or fair advantage, we didn't mean that nobody buys Israeli products because they're Israeli. Maybe a little bit on the margin. But the only advantage is for people opening the door. But at the end of the day, the decision is made on its merits. Same as an investor. I only decide, I make an investment decision on its merits. We invest in Israel because it's great for our LPs, for our limited partners, for the pension funds who invest in us. We don't invest there because we're Zionists. We invest there because it's good business. And we need to compete for the dollar that we invest in with investments in the US, in Australia, in Southeast Asia, elsewhere. We need to prove ourselves day in, day out. And in that sense, I think having a higher bar for an Israeli-related decision is actually a good thing. It keeps us more competitive. It keeps us on our toes.
Fantastic.
I think it's kind of not fair for sometimes for the Israeli. What if I'm like not significantly better than the other option, just a little bit better than the other option? Why shouldn't just because the executive is Israeli, they shouldn't be getting the deal? I mean, we're fundraising for Icon. We get corporate sponsorships, and in one occasion, and many times there's no problem, but the corporate person that was speaking with me was Israeli, and he's like, "Well, I can't do that because people, all the other countries that want to do the same." I was like, "Well, we're not like the other countries. We have a better product, and every other corporate, when we have someone Israeli, there was no issue." So, again, I think it's also a combination of your personal belief and your political. As much as we don't like to say that big corporates are political, but like
Are you serious?
your political credit in the organization. But I'd like it to be, if we're as good, you have the option to choose something Israeli.
So as long as you can, I see it completely not as a challenge, but actually just a great opportunity to combine two passions together. And as long as you make a decision that has its merits, and you have the competitive advantage of the ins to justify things. And I'm thinking about it even here. We partner with a lot of Jewish organizations, right? We do a lot for Jewish Israelis. We don't do it because it's Jewish or Israeli. We do it because it makes sense and there's a rationale. But guess what? We get the extra benefit that we do something that we feel we're contributing to the communities and causes that we're passionate about. But I think, my view is that, you'll never make a decision just because it's Israel. This is not where, the business world is not where you should make those decisions.
So the real challenge is if you think about Zionism, right? Zionism, when you say in a statement, I'm a Zionist, that's a very big statement, right? If you think about it. You don't really learn to appreciate it, for me personally, inside of the United States. You take it for granted. You take your Judaism for granted, and probably you take your birthright as your intuitive right, because you're being born in Israel, etc. So if you think about that, I want to examine the tension between Zionism to the platform. So far, we've talked about the platform, its advantages, unfair advantages, and others, the value proposition, the involvement on the strategy. What do you think about the link between Zionism, explicit Zionism, not the inherited one, that you're kind of taking for granted. And should we use this platform? We talked about its immense power, its involvement over the years. We have a fantastic platform today. The merits, value proposition, startup nation. Everyone today, I think almost everyone understands what's the power of startup nation. Should we harness that to defend Zionism in the areas that we believe or not? What do you think about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. I think that if you look at the angle of impact innovation or tikkun olam, it's definitely a way to make this connection. So you're using the technology and the innovation in Israel and the good that it can provide to the world, solutions to world problems. And you bring in Jewish community, Israeli abroad. I think that that's a way to look at it, which I don't think that anyone can have anything negative to say about it. It's non-controversial.
I think it's an opportunity. I think the definition of Zionism is the love of Israel. So it doesn't have to be the love of the current government of Israel. It's the love of Israeli high tech. It's the love of Israeli art. So like we have this business Zionism that we're talking about now, but there's got maybe also this culinary Zionism. And there's
That's my favorite part.
Like Noor and
like
others. Yeah,
my
you
parents are,
expert.
speaking about culinary Zionism, there's a great Israeli chef here in Palo Alto. His name is Guy. And my parents are considering moving to the Bay Area. And I'm asking, really, what are you thinking of? Where do you want to live? And my mom goes, as close as possible to where the chef is.
So that's the contrary to Zionism.
No, but he's an Israeli chef. It's an Israeli food. Maybe they should move to Israel. It's true. So I think there's many aspects. There's many ways to express Zionism, and we should do it. And we should do it as it could be an entryway into other way, like doing something else for the community, bringing actually people to doing something philanthropical. So we're a nonprofit, and I think we're bringing into like public working or philanthropy or like this nonprofit doing, people that were not involved otherwise. They come to it because it's interesting for them for business. And I even see here around the room some of my mentors, and that might have been their first interaction, like volunteering in the nonprofit and then doing more stuff in other places.
Fantastic.
I don't know if that's what we meant, but I think there is a fine line that we need to make sure, in my mind, that we don't cross about sort of mixing sort of the business aspect of it and Zionism. I think the minute you have an agenda, let's use business to advance Zionism, and then you, again, going back to your previous question, start sort of having a gray area of what should be the criteria of pushing business opportunities for the sake of Zionism. I think that's a line that if you cross, you can create the opposite effect of it. Again, and going back to something that Eli said in the past, a lot of Jewish philanthropists, big Zionist people, their connotation in the Israeli business community is super negative. They got burnt, they've been sold. Today in today's world, again, I'll take the cyber. Everybody who comes from Israel ran the cyber for the Mossad, Shin Bet, or the IDF. There's at least 300 of those who did that, and they're selling themselves that way. And I think we need to be careful of overly promoting Israel where it doesn't make pure sense. I think to Ethy's point, where it does make sense, absolutely, it's a great way of making Israel, and there's enough of that to make Israel relevant for the world beyond political issues, as to not having to have the need of overselling it or making decisions that go a step beyond what's a business rationale. So I would caution us to overly sort of go and say, let's use the business community as a way to advance Zionism.
Absolutely not.
As you said, business is business, and business decisions should be just made on their merits. But sometimes the best way to achieve a goal is the oblique, unintended way.
Right.
And in Israel, we receive many guests from all over the world. And I know only two kinds of people when it comes to Israel. I know those who haven't been and those who want to go back. So people who come to Israel, whether they be Indians, Australians, or whatnot, and they come, they fall in love with culinary Zionism and the nightlife and whatnot. It's an amazing experience. They come there because it's good business. But if they fall in love and they have a warm part of their heart for Israel, that's amazing. we brought a main international institutional investor, a very big investor managing tens of billions of dollars into Israel. And the chief investment officer tells me, look, my family's Italian. If I have time off, I go to Italy. If you hadn't invited me, I would never have come to Israel. It's really not of interest. That was on the first day of the visit. On the third day of the visit, he tells me, I'm bringing my entire board here next year.
Right.
So it's, and we didn't do this for Zionism. We did this because we think it's a great place for them to invest. But if they happen to love us in the process, why not?
So I personally feel that, we think about Zionism, Zion, Israel, and, there's Zion here and Zion in Israel. I think that the state of Israel have reached the tipping point of a very crucial milestone of recognition. And the challenge is the sustainability and growth, okay? And when you think about it, my personal belief is that if you rub the Zionism in someone knows, it will be counterintuitive. And I think that it's a subliminal message. It's kind of Zionism being manifested. And again, we're examining it through the business platform. In my personal belief, the Zionism being manifested by the business success. If you think about it from the economical standpoint, think about the firm motive is to benefit the wealth of the shareholders, right? And if you can manifest that through Zionism in a subliminal way, it's very powerful. I'll share with a personal example. You may find it hard to believe, but only recently, like more than a month ago, we've taken the Intel Executive Committee for the first time as a team to visit Israel. We've been operating in Israel for 40 years. We're the largest private sector employer and never been the case that we went as a management team to Israel. So we went there. We came to visit.
Mobileye, no?
How come it never happened before? How come it happened? It happened because basically, and I'll share with you an anecdote, we've managed to turn around the company. We're growing again, significantly. We're going to generate additional of $10 billion to our revenues this year.
So travel expenses went up so you can go.
No. So the CEO says, I really want to reward you guys, the management team, for this transformation. How about we go to something great, like exotic, like Hawaii, etc. But then, we're Intel. So we said, okay, no, it's wrong, So we came with another idea. How about we recognize ourselves by going into one of the important places for our company? We have a fab in Israel, the most advanced one, 10 nanometer. We have a fantastic management team that is established there. Lots of the innovation, CPU, etc., come out for Israel. So we said, let's go and examine. So we met with the head of the Mossad, with the Air Force commander. We went into the
real ones.
The real ones. Yeah. The flight simulator. We met with some of the officials. We even went to see Prime Minister Netanyahu at his chamber. And each meeting that we attended, we debriefed afterwards. And we had a discussion before and a debrief after. What have we learned? And then when we came back as a management team, we assembled all the executives in the company. You're talking about 500 people. And a non-Israeli stood on stage and a fantastic presentation. What have we learned? What are the values? What are the existential threats that Israel is facing? How does that narrative impact the business narrative? Now, at that moment, I was very proud. For me, that was how Zionism being manifested. And I think, and I'm just sharing this example because for me, Zionism 3.0 is basically, it's all about pragmatism. Yes, we have the pragmatism, the value proposition, but if we're able, as Israelis, as Jews, to blend between the two, so people won't view us as Jewish or Israelis, but it will be subliminal, that's, I think, the real opportunity for us to grow our element. When I think about ICON, Israel, the I stands for Israel. But the speakers that are coming to ICON, many of them are non-Israelis.
Not even Jewish.
Not even Jewish. And that's, for me, it's very powerful. When these kind of platforms kind of like, Leumi. The first connotation Israeli is an Israeli bank. But
We have a Charlie Johnson as the chairman of the board.
exactly,
It's like
and many,
Herzl only knew.
exactly. So when you think about it, Leumi is a name, right? So
It's national. Not just a name, it's national.
Leumi, national. But it's not the first
Herzl's
national bank. But you could have chosen the first national bank, no, or the national bank. No, it's Leumi. So it says something. So I think leveling it up and opening up the opportunities, this is where I see the next opportunity for that. Now, we also wanted, I think we have like 10, 15 minutes to open it for a little bit more lively dialogue with you guys. So maybe we'll start, and if you can speak up so others or... Excellent. And if you can mention also your name.
I don't think it's on. Is it
It's
on?
on, yeah.
Okay. My name is Linda Cohn. I was a professor in Israel, usability starting in '99 for about 10 years. Brought the field to Israel, actually. There was no field in '99. One of the things that I really, and I'm a mentor at Tel Aviv Google right now. One of the things I see is that, the skyline of Tel Aviv is changing in front of our eyes. It's unbelievable, the money that's pouring into Tel Aviv right now from China and being able to monetize the startup world. But one of the things that I worry about as an American and as an Israeli is the perception. One thing you talked about here is very rosy, but there is a perception of a lack of trust of the banking part of this whole thing, vis-a-vis binary options, where people got burned and there's a lot of corruption. So how do we get that out and get Israelis to really up the customer service and really understand that doing business at the highest level is a whole different ballgame from how they have been doing business? The ideas are there.
I don't know even how binary options work. I know. There's. Within Startup Nation, and having a nation of ingenuity, there are people who are exploiting that capability in negative ways. And again, we see them, unfortunately, sometimes in headlines in various news, not just in Israel.
But it affects how people trust it.
Sorry?
It affects the trust.
I don't disagree, but I
Same as
I think there's
NSO,
corrupt
right?
people in every country and wherever you go. I don't think Israel is ranked really high on corruption. This is not...
But on the banking side, people don't trust them.
I'll say the following.
The banking system in Israel did
highly regulated.
not suffer a financial crisis, was not
one of the
saved,
the few.
unlike the U.S.
Right.
or others. I think the banks in Israel, which is a completely different subject, the banks are big in Israel.
Yeah.
Frankly, Bank Leumi used to be the biggest employer before Intel until it started to become more efficient. So now I think it's the third.
We're not efficient.
But I thought you were talking about more of sort of the different types of startups that came in areas of that. But the banking system, I think only in Israel, for Israelis, the Israeli banking system seems like like a negative thing. So
I can maybe add that since we joined the OECD, there's been a tremendous improvement because we have to comply with all the regulation of the OECD. So there's much more involvement into that. But the banking system in Israel is considered one of the leading globally. We had Stanley Fischer as the head of the Bank of Israel, and it's the world leading expert, and all the banking regulation is extremely strict. So it's maybe not on the banking side. We do have some area to improve, but it's more actually on the government side and other areas. But banking system is very heavily regulated in Israel.
And let me shed more light. In Israel we have a very vibrant fintech and blockchain community. Very vibrant. You see things from advancing new systems to leveraging not just blockchains, but Ethereum and others to define new technologies, multi-tiers, etc. That comes obviously with learnings. I do agree with Avner. If you think about the last financial crisis, Israel, one of the few, if not only, humbly speaking, that came extremely strong, very healthy financial balance sheets. When you examine that, I think the tension between the regulation to the people who operated the banks was extremely healthy, and were some times where the central bank has to intervene. It did. But remember, Stanley Fischer is a figure even before Stanley Fischer, right? And now, right? But yes, so I think that Israeli banking systems is a lot to learn, and when you think about the digital transformation in some areas, including in Leumi, you see even more advanced. So similarly, you could relate to that is the NSO, recent reports on NSO as a firm, right, that can basically taint the cybersecurity world. Ones who don't know, the NSO is one of the, call it security or cybersecurity, financial services, others. On the other hand, you have companies such as Signia, right, that is a good example of how you harness and leverage it. So I don't know if this is something that we could look at it as an outlier that taints that, but
again, to your point, I think, I mean, the minute there is a perception, there is a perception. I think perception, whether it's, perception is perception.
I think a broader point here is, we're just like any other group of people. There's honest people, there's less honest people, and I think viewing an idealized version of Israel is also unfair to Israel. Like everyone, we have successful people, less successful. Most people in Israel, like in most other places, are very honest and law-abiding, and at the margin, we have people less so. Like any other country, don't view us as anything less or more than the humans who we are. And I think just being in touch with us as humans is the best way to view that, and also to mitigate the effect of people on the margin who do less desirable things.
Sure. Please.
Hi, Ben, also Israeli-American. I'm living in the States now for 6 years. I have a question about branding. So for the first time in history, being Jewish and Israeli is a big positive thing. It was never like in history. Being Jewish was never positive, sexy even. Like we hear that in universities for the first time ever now, students are faking, writing that they're Jewish or connecting in some way to be part of the Jewish, my question about business is, so first of all, that's great for business, and I hear that you are building from that positive branding for business. My question is, do you feel a sense of responsibility to not just benefit from this branding and network, but also to proactively continue and strengthen that? Like, do you even, like I'm interested, hold people accountable when things happen or ask them to take a position? Like, does this go both ways, and can you leverage for the future as well?
I can share if you want.
Please,
something.
and I'll pitch.
Actually, first of all, Eli and me were both on the steering committee of the Reutz Alliance for Israeli Leaders for Zionism 21 movement. Okay, so this is one part. But on the other hand, when you're talking about the sense of responsibility, I can give you an example that in Australia there was a huge rush of Israeli companies listing on the ASX, on the Australian Stock Exchange. And the head of the stock exchange is actually a very good friend that I brought to Israel for the first time. He fell in love with Israel. He's got the red ribbon on his hand. And when this wave started, I went and asked to have a meeting with the whole, group that is in charge of the listing to tell them, listen, please have a good look at the companies that you're accepting, and look at them the same way as you're looking at Chinese companies, because I don't want this to become kind of a bubble, and then it will ruin all the thing that we've built for many years. So yeah, we do have a sense of responsibility, and we want to see the right businesses succeeding, and we don't want to have any fraud or anything happening. So and we're taking actions.
We are publicly on the record as an Australian Israeli fund on that very topic. We don't think that you should invest prematurely in public companies that are not ripe for the public. And even if there is some short-term gain for some people to be had, we think it's a very bad thing long-term. Mm-hmm. And we care very deeply about our perception as an industry and our perception as a country, which is a very dear asset to us. If one person taints it, then it negatively affects everyone. So we actually went on the record, which was not an easy thing for us. Think about it. We are, to many Australians, we represent investing in Israeli tech, and we went on the record going against that thing. And also, like Ethy, privately tried to voice our concerns. So yes, we care deeply about that.
I can say the same. I mean, we've made a conscious decision here, first of all, that we're not selling any own Israeli products. So we're not selling, we're trying to sort of be an asset manager to sort of, and every one of our clients, the first sort of, again, part of the asset is, oh, you must know Israel best, so like help us invest successfully in Israel. And I think, our decision was, Israel is a tough place to invest. It's not necessarily that the asset management or the VC community even in Israel is the best way to get exposure to Israeli startup nation. And we're definitely not going to be the ones telling you how the best way to invest in that. We do have, we have 2 vehicles that are Israelis that we have recommended in the past to investors. And that was after, years of due diligence and because of a specific niche. So we try to stay away from selling Israel as, come invest in us, because frankly, it's not that easy to invest in Israel. And it's not so trivial to see the returns from throwing money into the Israeli pot.
And 1 in 10 startups fail. I mean, we don't hear the other side of the story, but that's a statistic, so.
Right.
To this point, I think, you got to do your passion. I think you can't demand anyone to do anything. I think our role is to present the opportunities, to make it cool and branded and sexy, and here, come and help, and you're going to love it, and it's going to be awesome. But everybody has to follow their own heart and their own passions, like we do.
When you create a strong platform, obviously, Ben, the questions about your responsibility and your role increases. I'll end by saying, being on the board of the JCC, if you think about it, the Oshman family JCC over the years is really establishing itself as an opinion leader. And you ask yourself, including through recent events, I'm digressing here a little bit, but even through recent events, what is the role and our responsibility of that? Should we check and take a look at our advocacy policy, right? If you think about, and there's a lot of questions around that. Obviously, I would say the following: when you create a successful platform, the responsibilities and the opportunities to drive an agenda is increasing. Hence, the sensibility and being sensitive to the impact and the consequence, the longer-term effects are also increasing. The fact of the matter that we are creating a place where diverse opinions and listening carefully people and making sure that we're very inclusive in how we listen and argue, though people may have different opinions. I think this is the most responsible element, that you allow yourself a place when you can be very safe and responsible for that to begin with. I think we ran out of time. I wanted to thank you for holding on. It's been a long...
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, excellent. We still have time for 1 more or 2 questions. Please, Marcus?
Yeah, thank you. Maurice Zucker.
Maurice, sorry.
I'm a physician, and I consult with VC and private equity in healthcare. And Israel is the go-to place. They are the biggest private equity companies who want to know what's going on in healthcare in Israel. And I'm fascinated by what you were saying about business is business, and it's such an, at the same time, it's such an incredible opportunity. We have a lot of these funds, non-Jewish, coming to Israel and being fascinated, blown away, and how to leverage this opportunity for the greater good of Israel, the economy, as well as the business aspect. Are there any things that we're not thinking about to leverage that Israel's the go-to place now?
I think we're not leveraging it enough, and that's where I think your question hits the nail on the head. But I think what we should do is hold ourselves to exceedingly high standards and create the best opportunities we can, and be honest and forthright about it. I think the beautiful thing about the Israeli ecosystem is that it's so diverse and so quickly adaptive. I was hosting a delegation from a very famous automaker in Israel about 5 or 6 years ago, and they were saying, oh, we don't really see a lot of automotive innovation coming out of Israel. And I said, well, yeah. Well, here we are 5, 6 years later, and I think it's very clear that the Israeli ecosystem is one of the foremost in the world responding to the challenge of autonomous cars. So the Israeli ecosystem is extremely adaptive. Throw it a challenge, and hopefully it will rise up to the challenge.
Yeah. You can see even, ag tech. The government set a goal to become a leader in agricultural technology a couple of years ago. Today we've got about 650 companies in ag and food tech. Most of them were created in the past 5 years. So it's really, really adaptive and evolving ecosystem.
But I think to your point, I think this is the role where sort of the platforms play a great role of sort of creating the opportunities and the accessibility of Israel, whether it's, the Ministry of Economics, the attachés, that's exactly what Ethy has been doing, is basically creating the opportunities and the awareness and the pipes to go and visit Israel and to go on delegations, very much tailored, try to avoid adverse selection and avoid meeting the wrong people in the room. And I think ICON, in a way, serves very much the same way on sort of a more non-for-profit basis of creating a platform that allows the interaction of interested investors to come and meet the ecosystem and find their way into it. So you have the sort of the direct investment angle where Ellie brings the investors. You have the government, and then you have the non-for-profits that all play varying role. And I think today in most countries, again, I don't know if you're private equity in Uruguay, what's sort of the best way to access, but definitely in the US and the investment hubs, it's, there's plethora of channels and platforms that allow you to get to Israel.
And actually see other countries trying to copy us. So I got a call from C100, which is a Canadian similar organization. Actually, when we started ICON, we learned about C100 to kind of learn from them when we do. And then 4 years later, I'm getting a call from the woman who's heading C100. She says, you're doing amazing things. I want to learn from you. I got a call from someone who was asked by the British government to do something similar for them. So I think we've been also recognized by other countries, which is cool, and other countries trying to do similar thing. But we have the Jewish people.
Right. And I would like to end with the following. When there's opportunities, there are also the areas that people are taking exploited. So I just want to say the following. Then these opportunities also raise the bar when it comes to doing it in a high integrity level and very ethical. And if it's not done with integrity, it's not worth doing. Okay? So with that, thank you so much for coming, and enjoy the rest of the day.